The next thing I'm going to show you how to do is take this amber calligraphy, which by the way was about 10 years ago, and I just started my portfolio and then sort of opened it up just recently here for this project. I'm going to take that calligraphy and I'm going to show you how to turn that into that purple sort of jewelry look that existed in the final piece. So I'm just going to take this image, which by the way is huge. It's like 6,000 by 6,000, way bigger than I need it to be, but that's okay. I'm just going to drag it and drop it into Inkscape. You can find Inkscape at www.inkscape.org. Again, it's open source, just like GIMP. It's completely free, just like GIMP. And again, it's an amazing piece of software. This would be your Photoshop sort of, or I should say Adobe Illustrator sort of compatible software, where GIMP is more of your Photoshop software. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this image that's called up. Again, it's black and white, and in order to work with this, I need to turn it into a vector sort of representation. So I click on it, I click Path, I click Trace Bitmap, and I highly recommend, if you are a calligrapher, I highly recommend getting used to this dialog box, because it is an amazing piece of work for very detailed calligraphy that you may be doing. Brightness cutoff, edge detection. If you have a color image and you want to convert it, you can convert it. It's an amazing, amazing little engine here. Great for calligraphers to learn this and adjust these thresholds as you go. I'm going to use the default settings here. I'm just going to click Update. And what that's going to do is going to do a little test in the right image. That's what I want. And then I basically just click OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to take that black and white image, and you notice there that the size has changed. Actually, it's not quite true. What that is a second graphic that appears on top. The way you test that is simply by doing this. Click on the color. I'm going to click on pink because that's the end result that I want to get. I'm going to just take this. I'm going to drag it off the screen a little bit. Now you see two of them. So this is the original that I converted to a vector, and the black and white is a raster, and the one on the left is a vector. If you notice, when I click on this raster image and I click color, I'll do red, it has absolutely no effect, and that's because it's a raster image and not a vector. So working in Inkscape, it's great if you can be working in a vector representation. A vector, of course, is completely scalable at any sort of resolution, and it's absolutely a perfect representation of that. I'm going to take the original, I'm going to delete it. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to take this, I'm just going to drag it sort of in the middle here, and then I'm going to change the size of the paper because it's enormous, and I don't need that. So I go Document Properties, and I just go Fit Page to Selection, and I'll crop the paper for that size. It's still huge, but that's okay. Later it'll get resized when we pull it back into GIMP. The only filter I want to run here is jewelry filter. So the first thing I did, you notice I colored it that pinkish sort of color. Now I'm going to go to Materials, and I'm going to go Enamel Jewelry, and immediately it runs an effect. Now that's really hard to see at that scale, so I'm going to zoom in really, really tight and sort of show you that, show you what it looks like in a little more detail. Takes a while because, like I say, this is a massive image. I should have made this smaller, but I didn't. You can see the great detail that brings out here. That's exactly the look I want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually export that. Your connectivity between GIMP and Inkscape is one of two ways. You can either go through an SVG file. SVG file is essentially a text file. It's perfect for the web, very efficient. Your other option is PNG. PNG is what I'm going to use for this example here. So you notice I clicked on Page first, and then I'm going to go Browse. I'm just going to save this to my desktop here. I'm just going to call it the Amber Pink. Call it Amber Pink. Click Save. It doesn't do anything until you actually click Export. Well, anomaly about this tool. Little dialog box will come up. When you're exporting it to a bitmap image, it will take some time. Because Inkscape works in a vector component, and Inkscape's vector files are very efficient, but when you go to GIMP, which is a raster piece of software, you have to do that conversion. And like I say, you can do it in one of two places. You can either convert an SVG file from GIMP, and that takes a long time to do that, but you would be opening it in GIMP, which would take forever, just like this is exporting it out of Inkscape, which also takes quite a long time. Looking back, I probably could have made this image quite a bit smaller, which would have cut this time down in half. At any rate, you don't need to be watching this, this scroll bar, so I'm going to pause out of this and come back when it's done. So it's completed the conversion process, and you remember that this was the original, and then this is what Inkscape converted that to. And this is a PNG file, which has transparency in it. The PNG, of course, supports transparency. And this is the file that I'm going to bring into GIMP. So I'm going to close this off, and I park this back in the project folder that I'm working on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the main image here, which is the Amber tutorial. I'm going to load that back up in GIMP. And I'm also going to go back to this folder, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to incorporate the two together. There we go. It's opening up GIMP, and there's the charcoal sketch. I'm going to pull in the Amber calligraphy just by dragging and dropping that right into GIMP itself, and you notice that's its position there. When I paused the video, I did actually resize it a bit already, and that seemed to help. Whoops. I'm going to Control Z that. I made a slight mistake there. I'm going to bring this to the very top when moving stuff. Perfect. So I'm going to move this to the lower right hand corner. I believe I had it positioned somewhere along here. It's not the exact size as in the original piece that I did, but it's close enough. You get the idea with that. I can take that, and now what I can do is I can start to create some drop shadows. Go light and shadow. Again, because it is PNG, it will create that drop shadow for you perfectly. I open that dialog box and use the default settings again and just click OK. And it will create a drop shadow layer for you to give it some depth. And I'm going to do that once more, but just by duplicating this layer as well. And one more time. Give it a little more depth there. Perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to accentuate the highlights here just a slight bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this amber pink layer, and I'm going to call this highlights. And I'm going to do that by doing a couple of small operations here. I'm going to go to colors, and I'm going to go to threshold. And you notice how it turns black and white? That's exactly what I want. And I want to get a very tight sort of image here, where the whites are very small. And these are kind of what's going to end up as the highlights in the end result. That's a little too much. A little closer here. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to OK that. And then that's no good, so I have to remove the black that's in this image. So if I go to colors, again, a favorite tool of mine, color to alpha. And I'm going to change the color from white to black. OK. Notice that it will just leave me with the highlights, which is what I want. Click OK to that. And it's a little on the bright side, so I'm just going to tone that down by using overlay. And that's starting to come together like the original image that I produced. Another small secret here is blurring this, and blur it in a directional mode. So if you go filters, blur, and you go motion blur, not Gaussian blur, but a motion blur. And I want to blur that in a direction that is sort of down and to the right, and I think I used an angle of like, I don't know, 225. close enough, and I used a stronger sort of length. I click OK to that, and it blurs it in the direction of the lighting itself. Last component I want to talk about is I'm going to turn off highlights just for a minute, and I'm actually going to apply some lighting effects to the amber pink. If I go to filters, and I go light and shadow, and I go where's my lighting effects? Slide the third one down, lighting effects. This is an enormous engine here that you can use. I really like this. It does a wonderful job, and I'm going to move this blue dot to where I want the lighting to appear, and then I'm going to change my lighting options slightly, and I'm going to use, instead of a point light, I'm going to use a directional light. There it is. Too much, but that's kind of what I want. So you can adjust that simply by changing this a little bit. You can also use these here. And that's looking too blown out. That's looking okay there. I want it to be a little bit on the higher side, coming from the top left. Yeah, I'm going to try that. I'm going to go to my material. I'm going to have a shiny, sort of metallic look to it, and I'm going to click OK. And that will generate some lighting effects on the original layer, and then the highlights just kind of a finishing sort of touch on that. And that's basically the amber sort of look there of the lettering I wanted. Again, it's not exactly the same size as the original, but it's close enough.